This is an important subject because it's dealing with economic pain. Economic pain is actually the whole purpose of any government. And unfortunately for ourselves right now, the government is not being held to account. When the framers of the 2010 Constitution put it together, under Article 4, which declared Kenya to be a republic, there was the provision that Kenya is a sovereign republic under Part 1, but under Part 2, the Republic of Kenya shall be a multi-party democratic state founded on national values and the principles of government that follow Article 10. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because the only way in which a democratic republic can function is when the government of the day is held to account by the people of the country. Hello? Am I being heard?
Yes. Go on. We can hear you.
And I want to bring this alarm because Jimmy Wanjigi was speaking competently about what the executives have been doing wrong. And he was talking about the need for us, the people, to hold that government to account. But the only reason that we are being asked to hold the government to account is because of the complete failure of the opposition. And therefore, we cannot have any discussion about progressing Kenya with only Ruto must go. There must include the removal of this parliament and this Senate. Because the President Ruto, when he came into office, his first act was to buy political parties. All of you saw how quickly he moved to do that. And where he could not buy the parties, he bought individual members of parliament. Under our constitution, which is modeled under the Westminster model, the opposition is meant to be an official opposition with equal power to a government so that they can oppose the government of the day in order that the people can get a better government. And the public finances in the consolidated fund are meant to fund that opposition equally as they fund a cabinet and as they fund the presidency. So that at any point, the country is having a mirror. Our country is having a dual view, dual highway as to what is happening in the country. And since we allowed Ruto to raid the opposition benches and to actually assume the majority leader in parliament, when actually Azimio won the majority of members in parliament, then nobody is holding Ruto to account. Traditionally, the watchdogs in parliament, the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, the Public Investment Committee are chaired by the opposition. And the constitution under the Westminster model envisaged that a government cannot police itself. It must be policed by the opposition. And the Attorney General and the Auditor General and all the heads of any corporation or ministry were required to go to either committee for scrutiny, the same way they would have to go if the president was to summon them. And these are the reports, for example, that came during the Golden Bag scandal, during the Moi time, during the Kibaki time, the agro-leasing scandal, and so forth. But now what you have is the executive in full control of parliament, in full control of the executive, and therefore there is no accountability. And the citizens, as Jimmy is saying, we need to educate people, but the level at which we are educating the people means they don't have the access to government records. And unless Jimmy had put the kind of money he did together for forensic audit, it was not possible. Yet the constitution provides that we, the people, fund the opposition, and they have access to government records, have got access to everything so that they can give us this information. So as a people, we should never have reached this position if parliament and if the opposition was doing its work. Why do I raise this issue? I raise this issue because the Jay-Z revolution of 2024 is very different from the revolutions we had run before against Moi and against the second liberation, let's say. And the reason it is different, they started with the no finance bill by occupying parliament. and naming the MPs, tukaende tukasalimie hawa ma MPs. Then what happened is there was equal fear on government MPs as there was on opposition MPs. And it was the panic of those members of parliament because of this revolution strategy that jilted Ruto to say he will not sign the finance bill. It's because MPs went to him and told him we are finished. If we do this, we are gone, and these people will throw us out. So I want to say that I think if we look at the way forward, we must of all right now start being very, very critical of the people we are calling were heroes of yesterday. My friend Raila Odinga, who Jimmy and I know well, I want to warn him in this forum, and I want to tell him openly, if you become the man that goes to save Zakayo, you will not only be abdicating your responsibility as an opposition leader, but you will be killing the democratic state that was envisaged by our founding fathers. And this will be a legacy even Jaramogi will not forgive you for. Because the whole idea of fighting for Section 2A under the Moi regime was that we have a multi-party state where opposition parties would hold the government of the day to account. This way we are proceeding is making our citizens go and elect us in elections, which is their duty, and then tell them to manage the executive, to hold it to account and to remove it when they have also elected opposition MPs to do that on their behalf. So I wanted today to change this conversation to say that as we go to the streets from the 16th of this month, we go with two pieces of agenda. That even if Ruto was to go home, but we elect this kind of MPs, we are going to go nowhere. I want to give two examples. The MP for Cilicia, John Waluke, was convicted by a competent court of his peers to 67 years in jail for stealing 1 billion shillings from the National Cereal and Produce Board. Waluke was told in the alternative of his death sentence, he will have to pay back the 1 billion shillings. Not only was Waluke released on an appeal, he participated in an election, was re-elected to parliament against Chapter 10 of the Leadership Act, but he's still an MP, was elected under an opposition ticket, but now is working with William Ruto. So what are the Kenyan people being treated to? We are being treated to musical chairs of these people who have been corrupted in the system. So it doesn't matter if they're in the opposition or in the government, they are all in one boat. And this is why we must sound this alarm. Because if the MCAs in Eldoret or where that young lady was coming from, I could hear her pain of this Finland money. If all the MCAs of the opposition had taken her clarion call, I can tell you that money would have been paid back by the county. But because the executive is not doing it and the opposition is not doing it, this young girl becomes the advocate of the grandfathers and grandmothers of that area of Kenya. So today I want to say this, and I really hope that Raila Odinga's friends are on this line. Because before this, the only critic of Raila Odinga was Meguna. And I found sometimes he could be excessive in his language. But I want to tell Odinga, after working with him for several years, Kenya is at crossroads. And this particular time, I know you're having resistance from other leaders of Azimio who are not boarding on this idea of a cabinet reshuffle or an idea of some kind of dialogue. I want to tell this country why the court rejected BBI. BBI was rejected by 5 judges of the High Court because they said that this was driven by the president and Raila Odinga. It was not driven by the public. It was not people driven. And because it was not people driven, the judges, Judge Ogunda, Judge Ngugi, Judge Nyaga, and Matheka, and all of them said that the only way to alter the constitution is to involve the people and get them to begin their agenda. Now, when you say you're going to have a dialogue and you're calling it a public dialogue, but you're not involving the people, you are saying it as Raila. You are going to do to us again what you tried to do to BBI. Because the people who are marching and who started this agenda asked you to stay at home. Why are you leaving the house? Stay where they asked you to stay. If they want dialogue, they will ask for it. If they want to talk to Ruto, they'll ask for it. Why are you intervening in a constitutional moment where the people are only acting because the opposition is not acting? So as Jimmy is saying, if these matters had just also had more people giving Jimmy some space, if there were more leaders in the opposition, if there were more people adding voice and adding, firewood to this fire, this issue of economic rape and economic destruction of Kenya would have reached all of us sooner before we get, from the frying pan to the fire. Why am I raising these things? I'm raising these things because I was a press officer or press head of ODM in 2007 and working for Raila Odinga. And that time, I remember that when there was post-election violence in Kenya, Anyang' Nyong'o, who was Secretary General of ODM, wrote a letter to The Hague, to the prosecutor, and said, as ODM, we would like to bring information of crimes against humanity that were done in this country. And they named William Ruto as one of the offenders, according to the violations that could amount to human rights. And following the letter of ODM, William Ruto was charged with 3 crimes of forcible eviction of population and so forth under the Charter of Human Rights. And the same Raila today is telling us that this thing he saw on the streets where 41 people were killed, when he was leading demonstration, 70 somebody people were killed. He's okay with it now that he can talk to Ruto for some dialogue to form some government of national unity. Then I have a duty to call out who was my former friend and say, as much as we are fighting Ruto, we must fight you. Because if you are going to take the country back every time we move forward, this generation cannot inherit our mistakes because we have allowed this to continue to be the modus operandi. We go forward and deals are made from IPPG, a settlement, political settlement. We go back, government of national unity. We go back, we go to NADCO. From the day we went to NADCO, what one thing has been implemented in NADCO? People told me the other day there is the electoral commission. That electoral commission, who will appoint those people who will go to appoint commissioners? It will be a meeting between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. And if Odinga remains compromised as he is, how do you think we'll have a people's electoral commission? And that is why this nation, this country at this time, must do everything possible to constitute a public constituent assembly, form a transitional authority, and take power. And I want to say, if we do not do that, then these generations and those people who died will repeat the mistakes of their fathers. We are going to go back to a talking shop. We are going to go back to political settlements. Raila will be the chairman of the African Union. His daughter will be the head of somewhere in Yala, and Kalon and whoever else will be where. I just want you and this country to understand the dangers we are in. The dangers that we have are not tied to the executive. They are tied to abuse of the 2010 Constitution. As I finalize, I wanted to say that under the 2010 Constitution, Chapter 4 gave the Bill of Rights. And that Bill of Rights, read together with Chapter 1, where the sovereignty is with the people, was put in Bomas of Kenya by very senior people like Yash Guy for a reason. Because they foresaw a situation where the government and the opposition betray the people. So in the 2010 Constitution, and Kenya has one of the most advanced constitutions in the world, they put the Bill of Rights, where the sovereignty ran with the people. And to change that constitution, the executive could not manipulate the opposition to change it. And why the BBI was defeated by the High Court is they said if the executive conspires with the opposition to change the constitution, then the public will be have no defense. And this is a preserve only for the people of Kenya. And therefore, I would like to encourage. I want to thank Eric for this opportunity. I didn't want to get deep into the economics because I thought speakers before me have got very clear issues on the public debt and where it is and the problems that we have. And of course, that it's really impossible to solve this problem without either a default or a forgiveness of debt. It is just not possible. So my parting comment is that, ambition without knowledge is like a ship on land. And we may be happy saying Ruto must go, but I fear that if we don't change, not just the people who are in parliament, but the way we vote to a tribeless, active, informed election throughout the country, if we do not reduce the cost of leaders, we have 47 counties when we could have 7. We have a woman leader or woman representative who does nothing. She has no duty in the constituency. She has no duty in the county, paid by the public. We've got so many parliamentarians. I don't know how many hundreds, when we could have just 100. We have a bloated system because we said, oh, if we decentralize the resources, governors will be okay. Now we have got 47 centers of corruption. Nairobi County should be a ministry in the government of Kenya because of its enormity. And because it is late in the day, and I know many of these people will have things to say, I just wanted to contribute into this conversation that maybe we should have a bird's eye view, a deeper assessment on protecting the democratic state. And it cannot be protected by the executive alone. It must be protected outside the executive as well.
Thank you very much, Master Americ, for giving me this chance to talk just a little bit. I'm not going to talk much, but whatever I'm going to say, you really need to be keen on what I'm going to say. So here's the thing. As I've received the information that as from today, there was a meeting. There has been a meeting, and what the meeting was about is basically Raila Odinga trying to come again and pretend that he is one of us. He's trying to come and kingpin himself as people love Raila. We used to love him, but now his plan is to come. Uh, he pretends ajifanya kona sisi, but then when we now embrace him, he now goes and sells us to the Sugoi merchant once again. What I'm just trying to say is, do not accept that. We must remain leaderless. We must remain focused on our goal. And if in any case anything happens, we must not, our leaders water to attack. And also another thing, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but at some point I feel like Sugoi's recklessness and Tamayake, it has really opened us our eyes to discover more things like mining. I've been working on that area for a very jana juzi na juzi ingine. I've been working on that, and I came to realize there's a lot of shit happening in Kenya that most people are not even aware of. Hata zile jet mnaona huyu jamaa ati alienda huko anasema alitumwa na mabesti zake, kumbe huyu jamaa alienda kutuza huko bana. So I'm
Mm.
not going to talk about that pretty much. I'm planning to kuna files bado nakusanya hapa na pale before I give you
Yes.
a full dosage of what is actually happening, because
Yes.
I've come to understand even there's a part of where the Pandora Papers, this whole thing it's like a food web, a very big web that is interconnected. Easy
Hmm.
conservancies is our lami nini, a lot of dark things that are happening at the expense of Kenyans are really
Okay.
happening. Are really happening. New my attempt.
Okay.